Christianity. Christianity's stance on non-believers has evolved over centuries, influenced by scripture, theology, and historical context. At its heart, Christianity teaches love and tolerance toward others, including those outside the faith. Although throughout history, Christianity's treatment of non-believers has been shaped by the times. In its early days, Christians themselves were persecuted as non-believers by the Roman Empire. During this period, the faith spread through peaceful evangelism and the resilience of its martyrs. However, as Christianity gained political power, its approach toward non-believers became less forgiving. In the medieval period, the Crusades, the Inquisitions, and forced conversions of Jews, Muslims, and pagans marked a shift toward coercion. Those labeled heretics or heathens were often subjected to violence and marginalization. Even the Protestant Reformation, which aimed to reform Christianity, brought its own struggles for non-believers, as atheists and dissenters faced punishment from both Protestant and Catholic authorities. It wasn't until the modern era, with the rise of secularism, that Christianity began to embrace greater acceptance of religious freedom and coexistence. Christian theology provides frameworks for both inclusion and exclusion of non-believers. On the inclusive side, Romans chapter 2, verses 14 to 15 suggests that non-believers who act morally, even without knowing God's law, have that law written on their hearts. This implies that salvation could be possible through righteous living. However, many Christian traditions emphasize exclusivity. For example, Acts chapter 4, verse 12 states, "Salvation is found in no one else," highlighting the belief that only through Jesus Christ can a person be saved. This theological exclusivity has often been a driving force behind Christian evangelism. In practice, Christianity has long emphasized outreach to non-believers. Missionary work is one of the most prominent examples of this. Additionally, many Christian groups practice community outreach, such as feeding the poor or providing education, as a way to demonstrate Christian love and connect with those outside the faith. Overall, Christianity's relationship with non-believers is a blend of inclusion, evangelism, and at times exclusion. It reflects a faith that has grown and adapted through history, seeking to balance its message of love and salvation with the challenge of coexistence in an increasingly diverse world. Islam. Islam's stance on non-believers is rooted in its teachings on tolerance and coexistence, though interpretations vary across contexts. The Quran emphasizes freedom of religion in verses such as Surah al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 256, which states, "There is no compulsion in religion." Another example is Surah al-Kafirun, chapter 109, which declares, "For you is your religion, and for me is my religion," affirming mutual respect between faiths. However, there are also verses that caution Muslims against forming close alliances with those who actively oppose Islam, reflecting the historical realities of the time. In modern interpretations, many Islamic scholars advocate for peaceful coexistence and interfaith dialogue, emphasizing shared values like justice, compassion, and moral living. Historically, Islam has exhibited a diverse relationship with non-believers, influenced by the socio-political context of each era. During the Prophet Muhammad's time, tolerance was a key principle, especially during his early years in Mecca, when Muslims faced persecution. After moving to Medina, the Prophet established a pluralistic constitution recognizing Jews, Christians, and Muslims as part of one community. Non-Muslims, referred to as dhimmi, were granted protection under Islamic rule in exchange for paying the jizya, a tax for non-Muslim subjects. This system allowed them to practice their religion freely while contributing to society. In modern times, the treatment of non-believers varies widely among Islamic states, ranging from inclusive policies to strict interpretations of Islamic law. In practice, Islam encourages outreach to non-believers, often through dialogue, education, and acts of charity. Proselytizing, or dawah, involves inviting others to explore Islam, but this is generally done with kindness and patience, as instructed in Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, verse 125. "Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction." Islam's balance of tolerance, theological principles, and historical contexts shows a faith that has adapted to coexist with diverse beliefs across centuries. Judaism. Judaism's stance on non-believers is deeply rooted in its values of ethical living and respect for others. Unlike many religions, Judaism does not actively seek to convert non-believers. Instead, it focuses on moral behavior and righteousness. A key aspect of this perspective is the 7 Noahide laws, a set of universal ethical principles that Judaism believes apply to all humanity. These laws, which include prohibitions against murder, theft, and idolatry, as well as a command to establish justice, are considered sufficient for non-Jews to be deemed righteous and share in the world to come. This theological foundation demonstrates a tolerant and inclusive stance, acknowledging that goodness and morality exist beyond the boundaries of the Jewish faith. Judaism places a strong emphasis on peace and coexistence. In modern times, many Jewish communities actively engage in interfaith dialogue and initiatives to promote tolerance and mutual respect. contributing to global efforts for understanding and peace. During the diaspora period, when Jews lived as minorities in other societies, they often sought peaceful coexistence out of necessity. Despite facing discrimination and persecution, Jewish communities maintained pragmatic approaches to tolerance, particularly in trade, commerce, and intellectual exchange. In the modern era, with the rise of secularism and civil rights movements, many Jewish communities have embraced inclusivity and coexistence, actively participating in multicultural and interfaith initiatives. With the Talmud teaching that the righteous of all nations have a share in the world to come, acts of charity or tzedakah are extended to anyone in need, regardless of their faith. Hospitality towards strangers is another central value, exemplified by the biblical story of Abraham welcoming guests in Genesis chapter 18. In modern times, Jewish organizations often engage in interfaith dialogue to build bridges and promote understanding between communities. Judaism's perspective on non-believers is a delicate balance of inclusivity and distinctiveness. It highlights the importance of ethical living and coexistence while preserving the unique identity of the Jewish faith. Hinduism is renowned for its inclusive and pluralistic approach, making tolerance and coexistence central to its philosophy. The religion acknowledges that there are multiple paths to truth and divinity, as expressed in the Rig Veda's verse, "Truth is one, the wise call it by many names." This foundational belief fosters a deep respect for diverse viewpoints, including those of non-believers. Hinduism generally views non-believers as individuals on their own spiritual or philosophical journey, rather than as adversaries. The concept of Sarvadharma Samabhava, meaning equal respect for all religions, encapsulates this ethos of coexistence. Theologically, Hinduism offers a broad framework for inclusion while preserving its distinct identity. The religion teaches that divinity resides in all beings, regardless of their beliefs. This is reflected in the Upanishads, which emphasize the unity of the universal spirit in all living creatures. Hindu texts also emphasize the importance of karma, dharma, and ethical living, which are applicable to everyone, regardless of their faith. However, while Hinduism includes non-believers in its spiritual worldview, it also maintains its unique rituals, deities, and practices, which set it apart from other traditions. Taoism, deeply rooted in the philosophy of the Tao or the Way, emphasizes harmony, balance, and simplicity, which naturally extend to its stance on tolerance and coexistence. One of the core principles of Taoism is Wu Wei, or effortless action, which encourages non-interference in the lives and beliefs of others, where non-believers are seen as part of the natural flow of existence. Taoism does not impose its doctrines on others, allowing everyone to follow their unique path in life. As a result, Taoism inherently supports peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. Historically, Taoism has demonstrated a remarkable ability to coexist with other religions and philosophies. In ancient China, Taoism flourished alongside Confucianism and Buddhism, often blending elements of each tradition to create a harmonious cultural landscape. Rather than competing with other belief systems, Taoism embraced diversity as essential to maintaining balance. This approach allowed Taoist ideas to influence Chinese culture deeply, even among those who did not practice Taoism explicitly. The non-confrontational ethos of Taoism, reflected in the Tao Te Ching verse, "The way does not compete, yet it conquers," helped Taoism navigate complex social and religious dynamics. Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions, is built on principles of truth, righteousness, and moral order. Its core belief in Asha, the concept of universal truth and cosmic order, naturally fosters tolerance and coexistence. Zoroastrianism prioritizes ethical living over dogmatic adherence, viewing non-believers not as adversaries, but as individuals who can also contribute to the forces of good. The emphasis on free will, a cornerstone of the faith, supports a philosophy of non-interference in others' beliefs, allowing each individual to make their own moral choices. Historically, Zoroastrianism has reflected these values in its treatment of non-believers. During the Achaemenid Empire, Zoroastrian rulers like Cyrus the Great were known for their policies of religious tolerance. The Cyrus Cylinder, often called the First Declaration of Human Rights, guaranteed freedom of religion to all peoples within the empire, from Jews to Babylonians and Greeks. This period exemplified how Zoroastrian principles encouraged coexistence. In contrast, the Sasanian Empire institutionalized Zoroastrianism as a state religion, which occasionally led to stricter treatment of non-Zoroastrians. However, even during this time, non-believers who contributed positively to society were often respected. Buddhism is inherently inclusive, emphasizing tolerance. At its core, it teaches that all beings, regardless of their beliefs, are interconnected and capable of achieving enlightenment. The Metta Sutta, also known as the loving-kindness discourse, encourages practitioners to extend goodwill and compassion to all living beings, transcending religious boundaries. This universal approach to compassion is one of Buddhism's most defining characteristics. Historically, Buddhism has demonstrated a remarkable ability to coexist with other religions and belief systems. As it spread across regions like India, China, Japan, and Southeast Asia, it adapted to local cultures and lived alongside traditions such as Hinduism, Confucianism, and Shinto. Buddhism has often served as a bridge for intercultural and interfaith understanding. The focus is on individual practice, ethical living, and inner transformation. Those who follow moral principles and strive for wisdom are considered aligned with Buddhist values, even if they do not identify as Buddhist. This perspective allows Buddhism to respect and accept non-believers without exclusion or judgment.